looks like we have plenty of time. What I propose to do, this ground here we've already covered, and that's why I ended up beginning from here. But what I'm proposing to do is to take us, first of all, through the material that I now have on, come on, set up everything, setting is not here. I'd like to first of all take us through the material that I have at hand, and then I want to pause just in case, before I conclude, just in case there are some issues I haven't quite dealt with. I say that because judging from the open discussion and from the panel, there are issues that are closer to your hearts here in the UK that may not have been very closely related to my preparation. I was preparing in a general sense, of course, really wanting to tackle as much as possible the last part, but clearly there is work that I left out to be done. Okay, so maybe let's again do it that way. Perhaps to just get us started, I'll begin with a passage I want to read at the very end. And that is a very well-known passage. You may not even have to turn to it. Proverbs 22, I'm sure most of you have even memorized it by now. Verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And really, if there's anything for you to remember of all the things that I'm seeking to share here, that's where the heart of the work is. It's primarily to do with the way in which we are training up. And it's an ongoing work, training up, and then seeing something of the final benefit. I have borrowed a system, as I said earlier on, of the trivium dividing the process of child education into 3 sections. And so we had the grammar section, which we've handled. There is the logic section, which we've also handled. And then we have this last stage. And this last stage, I really need to begin by repeating that it is dependent on the first stage and the second stage. Perhaps the best way to put it, any teacher here, apart from Mr. Gabori, all right. Imagine being given a child to be taught by you in grade 8, which is the beginning of secondary school, who doesn't know multiplication tables. Imagine the kind of homework you are being given. And the only reason why this child has been brought into your class is because they are age mates with the others who are in that class. Now, it's a good thing psychologically that that child has come among age mates, isn't it? Psychologically. But before long, it's a torture both to the child and to you. Because as you begin to deal with this child in the classroom, it soon begins to dawn on you that some foundational issues are missing altogether. And so obviously as a teacher, you start complaining. to whoever it is who brought this child here, to say, look, the children who come to me at grade 8 should have had this and that and the other already put in place. That's exactly what we're dealing with here. At this stage, during this period, a logical worldview has been formed. And now your child is expressing himself. The individual personality that God has imbued this soul with is now finding self-expression. And hence you'll notice we began with knowledge, under logic we came to understanding, and now we are dealing with wisdom. Wisdom being the ability to apply knowledge to the best possible effect of it. And basically that becomes the challenge at the rhetoric stage. The key that I want to speak about there is that of self-expression. We've talked about it already through one or two examples concerning, you're buying gifts for the children after your trip to Singapore or Europe or wherever you're going to go, and then they say, look, you were better off giving me money. And I'm glad a few of you acknowledge that you've already had your experience, disappointment with some of your children because of that. Now, in another sense, what is really happening is that the child is finding himself in terms of his preferences in the world. And it's really frustrating for the child. Because for medical people, they will know that there is a lot of biological processes taking place in the individual. And much of it, they don't understand themselves. But in the midst of all that, the child finally wants to be what he wants to be now. I was supposed to find myself doing all this without, let's try again. Nothing is happening. Okay, even when I do end up, I know what's wrong. Just close that for a moment. The internet on this one has gone off. That's what happened. So I just need to make sure that the internet is working and we should be back in business. It's working. Okay. Let's try again. This tried a few times over, it was working perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what the problem is. I think I'll just have to skip this section. Let's do quit. And then let's few things. Okay, now, what do we do with a child going through this process? Remember, the issue that we're dealing with now is a child going through the process of making his or her own decisions. Your concern is that the child should be making his or her own decisions based on that logical worldview that we had spoken about earlier, and doing it wisely. That's really your task. And so, here is the statement. Use the book of Proverbs a lot during this period, because you are training your child to make wise decisions alone, number one. And then we said, with the end in view, number two. And then also with God in mind, number three. And that's really what the book of Proverbs is all about. If we can just quickly turn there. Proverbs and chapter 1. It's a whole 30 plus chapters given to us by God. And it's all about making wise decisions. Making wise decisions. Solomon, who wrote most of it, says, I begin from verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Notice the phrases there. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear. So even those who are already wise, they should also still hear. And what's going to happen to them? And increase in learning. And the one who understands will also obtain guidance. And then the final purpose, to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. That's the reason why the book of Proverbs was put into our Bible. Is to enable youths to relate to life and make their own wise decisions based on the end and also based on the God under whom they live. And the second part of it is a little lengthy. I won't deal with all of it, but it shows us clearly the kind of priorities that a child ought to have. And this priority is crucial when you have a child who is going to be leaving home soon. And remember, we're dealing with 15 to 21-year-olds. They've entered the period of adolescence. And the three are found from verse 7 downwards. The very first one is this. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The very first is that if you're going to be safe in the world out there, if you're going to make right decisions, you must have the fear of the Lord in you. Without that, forget it. I will not always be with you as you find. but God will always be over you. You will be giving an account to Him in due season. Therefore, what you need is the fear of God. The second is in verse 8 and verse 9. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. In other words, even when you have left my home, remember all the teaching that had poured into your life. It's going to act as a beautiful necklace around you. The teachings that have been given here, the instructions, both of father and mother, as is mentioned here, they will be for you. And then thirdly and lastly, something that I will, in fact it's even here as the next point, and it is to resist peer pressure. Verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, etc., etc. Verse 15, my son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your feet from their paths. And the reason is simple, because God is there. And in due season, God makes the evil schemes of the wicked to bounce back on them. And that's basically all he is saying here. Okay, so the book of Proverbs, the very way in which it opens, immediately suggests to us that it's a major tool for the instruction of our children. And especially in this last stage of life. Because what you want to achieve in them at this stage is the ability to make decisions for themselves, and those decisions being made with the light of who God is. So peer pressure is strongest during this period because they want to be thought well of by friends, and especially members of the opposite sex. I've never forgotten the first time one of our sons said, I can't even remember what the occasion was, but it had to do with dressing. And he said, the girls are going to laugh at me. Now, I wasn't there in the room, but where I was, I thought, when did the girls become so important in this country? That it should now really be concerned more about girls laughing at him than boys. But clearly, again, we're talking about how do you know whether someone has entered, This is the kind of marks that begin to tell you, another phase has kicked in. There is a real concern about that. Okay? In this stage in life, one of the greatest needs of young people is that of good role models. Remember, they are now wanting to chart a path for themselves. The world is presenting before them godless superstars every day through the television, through glossy magazines, through the internet, every day. The Elton Johns with their spouses, male spouses, smiling at cameras, walking on red carpet, and so on. it's very easy for your child to begin to think, what's wrong with that? You need to introduce them to good role models who have run the full course. And by the way, quite a number of them are in the Bible itself. I mean, a good story is that of Joseph. It covers quite a number of chapters, and it's good biographical material. And the reason is because they are then able to see the end from the beginning. And remember what we were learning earlier about sowing and reaping, sowing and reaping, sowing and reaping. They are then able to see that a life of righteousness may mean sacrifice. But look at what it yields in the end. So, do your children a big favor. According to their age, remember, 15 to 21 is quite a huge gap. Buy them the biographies. The younger they are, the smaller, simplified biographies. The older they are, the bigger and more demanding biographies. Give them rewards. Say to them, if you finish any of the biographies and you tell me about it, there is a reward for you. If you finish 2, there is a reward for you. And I tell you, for the sake of the reward, they will read those biographies, one after the other. What you are doing basically is you are helping them to end up with good role models. And it's good for you to have an open forum where when they're finished, they come to share with the others about what they have read. What is it about this biography that really went deep into their hearts? What is it? And as they are sharing, it's their own personalities coming out. Because they'll be saying, you know, the way this person's life has rebuked me is because, you know me, I think like this, like that. But when I saw the way this person handled this and that, I really got rebuked. This is the way we ought to really live, and so on. And they are deliberately sharing these things with others. And of course, hopefully you keep your promise and give them their rewards. But I really need to emphasize this. What kills our nations, and even as I speak about Zambia primarily, is just the absence of role models. I mean, imagine today a Christian who decides I'm entering into Zambian politics. Remember, we've been independent as a nation for over 40 years, right? Okay. Which biographies will this person make his way through so that the person can say, yes, I've got an example of a Christian politician whose life to the very end has been seen, and consequently I can see the end from the beginning. We hardly have any. Maybe Mwanakatwe, but he didn't last too long in politics, and so forth. And so invariably, when they enter into politics, they are swept away immediately by the corruption. And this, of course, they anchor outside Zambia into the Wilberforces and who's this guy I spoke about recently? Kaipa, and so on. They anchor into lives outside our context. It's a great need that we have. The other thing about children going into this period, in a sense I touched on it, is that first of all, they want their space and privacy. I touched on that. And I've added the phrase, and secrets. The reason I put it in brackets is because that's the way they feel on the inside. They don't want you to know some things. But at the same time, They want you to be available when they need you. So it's a kind of contradiction. Leave us alone, but don't leave us alone. Okay, and the difference amounts to that little phrase at the end. They are really saying, we want you, but you must first of all know, wait for us to say, come in. In other words, we must be the final ones to decide that you can now come in or not. The mistake we often make as parents, relating to this same point, is that we go to one extreme or the other. Either we refuse to give them the space and privacy. We insist we must know everything. After all, you are my child in my home. So that place you've locked there, I need to see what's in there. That telephone with a pin, what is the pin? I need to know what is inside here. And so forth. Okay, because I'm your parent, I must know in order. Now, that's a fight that will outlive you. You won't win. Okay, they will simply have another way in which they will now be keeping those secrets while you dumb are looking at this other side. So that we can go to that extreme. Or we can go to the opposite extreme where at the point they are really longing to open up with you, to share with you what's going on. You've also closed it. After all, when I wanted to peep in there, you were saying, no, why should I now give you time? And that's a serious failure on our part. It's important to realize that at this phase of life, you are slowly releasing this child, slowly into adulthood, stage by stage. And consequently, it's only right that as that child is beginning to sense independency from you, that you are also slowly, not completely, immediately releasing, but slowly taking a few steps backwards. And that's really what is happening at this stage. Okay, we're getting closer to some of the issues we're dealing with. This is an all-important preparation stage for the child finding his or her own career and life partner. It's a very important stage. That sudden recognition that women are not men. They are from where? Jupiter or Mars? Venus, thank you very much. Wow, us, we are from? Mars. You know, that sudden realization is a God-given instinct.